cord to this computer. Oh, it's still so weird. Oh, we lost Robert. He'll be back in a second. Live on the Book of the Face. Let's see. Oops. Oh, cut and paste. Go back to that one. Ink. Council. Save table. Number 19. 19. Look, we're growing up in the world. Going live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are here with V.A.C. Veterans Action Council. We're at Roundtable number 19. This one is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Principles of Rhetoric. So I'm going to start off by reading something most Americans should know, and if you're hearing it for the first time, let it sink in. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, that whatever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That is our Declaration of Independence. And so many of us have served, and of course, we have always fought and around, and I've always considered myself a constitutionalist. I carry a copy of the Constitution on my phone. I used to actually carry a hemp copy of the Constitution around when I was an activist, because I was going around and usually speaking at free speech areas, because those you didn't have to have a permit for. They were basically open to anyone to come in and to speak your mind. And so that allowed us to actually educate people about their rights. And usually the first thing that we started is making them aware of their most basic right, which is their Constitution. And that most interesting part of that is, of course, is that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's simple words, yet it's very complicated. And it's very complicated that, you know, we have 50 different states currently, multiple territories. And each one of our 10th Amendment little institutions have our own little laws that differ from each and every other state. We have, of course, these universal laws, which are the Constitution. But, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is different when we're talking things like, say, cannabis. Okay, I live in California, a state that has legal cannabis and also medical cannabis, but that didn't start off that way. So we had to actually realize that our liberty, we were living our lives, our liberty was impeded upon. So to pursue our happiness, we had to change the law. And that's part of being an American, is we all have and are enabled to be citizens and part of the discussion of the change that we want to be. And we are activists in our own right, each as veterans doing things all over the United States, because me personally, I have not arrived at happiness. I'm in that pursuit of happiness. I have not arrived at happiness until, in my justification, is till all of our brothers and sisters are no longer in jail over this plant and psychedelic medicines. Okay, that's mine. Okay, but my pursuit of happiness is different from Ricardo's pursuit of happiness, different from Michael's, different from Richard's, and different from Brian's. So each one of us, of course, raised our right hand and willing to give everything and up to our lives for our country, because our belief in our life as well as our liberty. And to be part of that liberty, sometimes we know where that begins and where that ends. And a lot of us found that out when we joined our service, because we had certain liberties, but when we became, of course, contracts of the United States government, our bodies became property of the United States government. And so there were liberties that we lost, needless to say, that we were not able to enact in any other way. So what does that mean to us as veterans, as we are in pursuit of change, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? What does it mean to you? So I'm going to start off with Ricardo Prieta. Let us know your thoughts, sir.
Oh, well, I mean, going back to that original document, it's obviously flawed from the get-go. And it's not all people, like, or even all men. It's just that particular crew that had a lot of similar interests and said, we're good, right? We're good. And then, went around and told everybody we were good. I think we're seeing a lot of pushback. We have seen a lot of pushback from the very start of the country, but being as imperfect as it is, it's still a good start. It's a good aspiration. Me personally, I dig freedom. I dig my independence. I like not having to seek approval or permission from others to explore this place where I'm at, explore my mind, experiment with different things, right? And as it relates to cannabis specifically, being a cannabis advocate and activist and a veteran, I look at this declaration and I see the list of issues that these men put forward and how they were being abused by their government, by the king, and the rights that were being stripped from them. Right? There's a lot there that rings true to me. But the thing is that when it's ringing true, I'm looking at my government that's saying these things. It's like, well, you're doing this. And stop it. Like, stop doing what you're saying. Like all that. Just wow. But there's this part in here. It says, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. So I hope we can do better. I have a belief that we can. Otherwise, what's the point of anything, right? Like, clearly, I believe that there's something to this system that we have in place, this experiment that we're all living through right now. In my opinion, it needs to be tweaked in a couple particular ways, right? But thankfully, that's why we're here at the council, to come at it from our little niche, and I'm glad to be a part of the team here. But that's what I'll start off with that.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Council Member Crowitz, Michael Crowitz, your thoughts?
Thanks, man. It's funny to start out this conversation by talking about another country, but that's essentially what I'm going to do, because I was thinking about back a bunch of years ago now when I was running the student chapter of Virginia Tech Normal, and it's kind of like Star Trek. I realized if I could just get people to really feel like the cannabis was absolutely legal, and they can act like it was absolutely legal and be that nonchalant about it and not hide it, that it was actually the hiding it that was triggering the police, kind of Pavlovian response. And I realized that I could send folks over to the Netherlands, over to Holland, who at the time, we didn't have any legal cannabis yet, but they had and still have the coffee shop system where you can purchase cannabis over the counter at the coffee shop, tolerated by the authorities. And you go over there. I had a patient I was working with that had a profound life-changing experience just because of the fact that it's accepted. He actually didn't feel up to going with me on a little day trip across town. I was on a bicycle. I left him at the hotel, room right there along the canals, and he had a joint and he didn't have a lighter, and he was standing along the canal, and a cop came up and he asked him if he had a lighter, and the cop lit his joint. And that was like, to this day, I'm sure he'll talk very quickly about that moment. It was just something that actually rocked something deep inside of him, that you had been an outlaw and counterculture and criminal and all these labels, and you sort of take those onto your soul a little bit. They attach themselves, and by being in that situation where it's just accepted, it's just normal, then you finally know what it feels like, what freedom feels like. And I always felt that was ironic, because this is a country that you're not allowed to even have a garage sale. Average American citizen would find their laws pretty constricting over there in the Netherlands, but nonetheless, having the ability of using cannabis openly, legally, and not be hunted down by the police for your lifestyle, it was at that time a real new thing for us. And that's kind of the first taste of freedom that I ever had, was outside of this country.
That is both beautiful and ironic, and also that I would say the same applied to me, because it was also my foray into the Netherlands in the mid-90s that gave me that first taste of sitting in a window smoking a joint, and there's a cop on the other side of the glass, and didn't bat an eye, didn't look any other way, didn't think anything else except, there we go. That's how it is. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating. That we tasted that kind of freedom in other countries, but not in our own country till we were adults and changed laws. Till you just recently, actually this week. So I'll go on over to Council Member Brian Buckley.
Yeah. No, it's a real interesting topic. I am pretty much a giant optimist. I very much love that I was born in this country. We've seen a lot of the world, and it's a little bit different. One thing I just love about this country is you can start at the bottom and you can work your way up to the top, and you could be at the top, and if you don't do something, next thing you know, in a couple generations, whatever wealth was there might be gone. So you kind of have to earn it every day. And I think that's just what it is about being an American, is just kind of earning that title as well. Some things I really saw, and wasn't so much in like my combat deployments. I mean, combat's combat, but you just see things in different countries and you kind of realize, how lucky we are. I think there's a lot of negative talk about our country, and I think people focus on the bad, but I usually try to look at the good and how we can kind of keep improving on that. I've seen countries where women are treated like second-class citizens. I mean, they can't even have a seat at the table. You just see some very bizarre things out there. And yeah, we have our mistakes, but I think we constantly look to improve and refine. And I guess really when it kind of drove home to me, like how much I love to be an American, was when I was at this course called SEER School. And obviously I'm not gonna get into all that, but people will understand eventually you get captured and you go into a POW camp. And things are going on for I don't know how long, but I never forget when you finally get rescued and they force you to turn and go to attention. They actually raise the American flag, and there's a lot of hard people in that course, and there was just tears in everyone's eyes because you truly had your freedoms ripped from you, and you really start saying, "Man, I'm so glad that I am an American. I'm part of this country." And that's just kind of I always looked at things when I was going overseas, was trying to do the best we can to, you can't fight things on a strategical level, not where we were ranked, but, try to help out those local villages or things like that and try to give them a chance, let them stand up on their feet and kind of spread the, some goodness on that way. But to me, I think it's just, I see a lot of people just saying, oh, this and this country stinks and oh, we're terrible and all that. Get your freedoms taken away from you for about however long that was, and then you actually see what you are and what you're part of and what you can do. It just changed my perspective. I'm just very thankful. So that's all I got on that.
Thank you very much. We're going to go over to Council Member Richard Boyer.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Can you hear me fine? Okay, good. Geez, where do I start? I would say that like the first thing that comes to my mind is worldview, meaning everyone develops their perspective on the world, through their experiences. Unfortunately, some folks never hardly even travel the country, let alone the world. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've seen many parts of the world, and I mean, for me, there is no place like home. I mean, America, it's great. It is the greatest nation on earth. It's far from perfect, and kind of like what echo what Rico said. The framers of the Constitution. I mean, it's a starting point. Sure, there's some tweaks that need to be made, and I mean, compared across the board, it's just America is just great. I had made a comment in the LinkedIn earlier about liberty is freedom constrained only by our responsibility to respect the equal rights of others. And to me, any right that I claim for myself, everyone else deserves that right. And I think some folks, whether issues get politicized or however their worldview has distorted their view on certain personal freedoms and liberties, all of that just kind of gets projected out. And the bottom line is, if everyone just adopted the mind, and this is just my personal thought, if everyone just adopted the mindset, that mantra, if you will, just respect everyone else's equal rights. That basically means if they're doing something that you don't like, oh well, it's not impeding or infringing your rights. It's just something that you don't like. I mean, and I think a lot of people just get wrapped around the axle about that. I'll add one more little thing, something I came across a couple of days ago, because I'm always nerding out and just seeking like cool quotes. And I can't remember who said this, but a society that aims for equality before liberty will end up with neither equality or liberty. A society that aims first for liberty will not end up with equality, but it will end up with a closer approach to equality than any other kind of system that's ever been developed. And I think that is aligned, kind of like, again, what Rico said, that we don't have a perfect system. There are some tweaks that need to be made. I think, as modern times come along, there's certain things that need to be tweaked. Equality, same-sex marriage. Hell yeah. I mean, everyone's always heard the quote that they think that a gay couple should be able to protect their cannabis crop with AR-15s. Hell yeah. I'm all for that, because that does not infringe or impede on anyone else's constitutional rights. I understand some people may have an issue. They may not approve of that, but oh well, it's each individual's right. And I don't know what the solution is. I think I just wish that there was a way to broadcast into everyone's heart, just respect everyone's equal rights. I mean, because if you had that magic wand, you could do away with like a lot of these laws involving hate crime and all these things that are geared towards protecting rights. If everyone just respected everyone's rights, it would be kumbaya, but that's not reality, of course. But yeah, I'm very passionate, and I can get salty about freedom and liberty. I don't like people's rights being violated. And yeah, going over multiple deployments in some of these countries where, you know, man, if you can't, if you're in that environment and you can't recognize how good Americans have it, I don't know what else to say to that. But that's just my surface thoughts on my head.
Well, nothing cures racism like travel. And there's nothing that helps you appreciate America than not being in America. I'm always very thankful after traveling out into other countries. It's quite quick to see where our liberties are greater or lesser. Even though they may be greater in some areas, there can be quite restrictive in others. And it's one of those things that I've always stuck to it. I've always considered, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness principles in the sense that, how we need to treat each other is just a simple thing. As long as what I do doesn't affect you or hurt or harm you in any way, I should be allowed to do that. That's, I think, seems to be the interpretation by our founding fathers. So it doesn't matter what I put into my body, you have no say. However, we understand, in that pursuit, the reality is that people abused alcohol and other substances and caused accidents and killed people. So we had to adjust and change. Our Constitution made alcohol illegal, and that lasted for not that long, and they changed it back. But women were not allowed to vote. African Americans were considered 3/5 of a person. You know, even our own Supreme Court, the Dred Scott decision, was even supported slavery. So there's lots and lots of areas where we're constantly working on trying to arrive at that part of liberty because we haven't got it right yet. We're trying. We are an experiment. And right now, I think one of the things I think that Richard as well as Rico are talking about, we've lost the idea of tolerance, of tolerating each other and tolerating agreeing to disagree. It's okay. I have no care what party you are. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat. I tend to be toward the independent libertarian, mindset because of looking at the mindset of those particular parties growing up. They have completely changed, whereas the names have changed and the party affiliation is kind of always left me wondering, which is why I've never found a home under either one of those umbrellas, but I have always under the Constitution, because that goes back to the simple principles of where we are and who we are and what we're allowed to be. However, we're, it is not lost on me that in the pursuit of my liberty for cannabis, I've had to risk my life. I've had to personally put my freedom on the line to change the laws. That time has since changed, at least for me and where I am. However, there are still states out there that, currently, Wyoming and others that, you've got to be very careful. You do not have the same pursuit of liberties that we have for cannabis, and you can go to jail for what I can do every single day. You could be put away for decades of time. So we have a lot of work to do, and um, I don't. I don't understand why people have kind of turned away from tolerance and acceptance and seem to become entrenched in rhetoric as opposed to principles. Um, what do you think has strayed us away from that? Is it, the last 50 years of, being taught civics by, coaches in high schools, as opposed to those in pursuit of the education of those that are really trying to change things at a constitutional level? I didn't necessarily learn how to do that. My sister did. She was on the UN committee in school because she was considered an educated formal person. So they taught her the ins and outs of how to actually do diplomacy. Well, that has real world effect and affect, because She could have plugged in and do exactly what Michael has been doing at the international level. So as we live our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, where are we now? Because of course we're in a different country than we were when the country started in 1776 and just around there. And we have had additions and changes to our Constitution. So I'm a little concerned about where we are after seeing a coup attempt and seeing Republicans so entrenched and not wanting to talk to Democrats. So where are we? Where are we headed? Ricardo?
Bad. It's all bad. I'm kidding. We're gonna be fine. It's gonna be. By the way, FINE is an acronym. It stands for fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So, I mean, we kind of hanging on a tightrope. We're on a tight spot, but if you look back throughout history, people have been in tight spots. New funky flavor, same basic shit. So how did we get here? Talking past each other, at each other, looking through each other, not really looking to the other party to engage in any type of reasonable discussion, conversation, back and forth, debate over the issues, getting into the gray areas. The issues aren't black and white. I mean, unless you're dealing with just something that's not even questionable as far as morals concerned. Like, we shouldn't be killing people, or there's a list of things that just right off the top of the head, anybody would say, well, yeah, I agree with not doing that. Unfortunately, it's not just one thing, right? There's a lot at play here, like a lot. Definitely within the last 50 years, the explosion of communication, access to internet. You look back at the 30s and they were getting freaked out because somebody who was like a really good storyteller convinced a whole bunch of people over the radio that Mars was invading. And they had to like literally stop what they were doing and hold some serious discussion about what had just gone down, right? And so you take that little kind of taste of what the fuck, and then you just blow it out. And you put all kinds of different access points with all kinds of different Mars invasions. And then you get little cheerleaders, Mars cheerleaders, Venus cheerleaders, Saturn cheerleaders, and they all have platforms to kind of recruit little minions. And then it becomes our team versus your team. And our team's got to be right, God damn it. We win in America, even against other Americans. And so empathy for me, because it's easy to identify the fucktards on the right and the dipshits on the left that I don't agree with. But there is nuance. And just because somebody who I really can't stand just by like them, like I don't fuck them opening their mouth, just them, right? And then they start to open in their mouth and then stuff comes out that I already deeply disagree with. It's at those times where it's like I really got to dig down and try to find what it is that they're saying. What's the issue? What of whatever, how I'm feeling, just by their presence, who they are, what my projection is based off of what I believe on them, right? And then do my best to hear them without like judging, which is difficult. Because some of the shit that some people says is like, it blows your wig back, it blows me back. And a lot of the justification for things that are not okay. Insurrection is not okay, right? And even burning down police stations and shit like that is not okay. We're in the cannabis movement. We've been living outlaw lives for a minute. A lot of us have, some of us have, not everybody, right? There's some different kinds. It's little beautiful rainbow village here. But by and large, we all share the same thing where we could be federally fucked if we cross state lines with something worthwhile for people to, explore, root around, and make a thing out of. Or we could do serious time in our own states, state time. Both of those things end with not really pleasant consequences as a citizen, where you're disenfranchised, you lose your vote, et cetera, right? But by and large, we're not trying to overthrow the government. We're not breaking down barriers and smashing police's heads in because they're kicking our doors down, flashbanging our children. We protest, we riot. Well, not riot, we rally, right? And then we put our thoughts down and try to act accordingly to what it is that we have available to us by way of our representatives, our elected officials, trying to hold them accountable. If nobody's doing what it is that you feel needs to be done, at the end of the day, there's nothing stopping you unless you have a felony or some other prohibiting factor for running for office for yourself. So there's avenues of approach. There's ways to get our grievances addressed. If we take the time to put a thoughtful narrative or summary down so that we know where we're coming from, and then try not to deviate. But then you have to take into consideration where the other side is coming in at. And I don't know if that answered your question. Really kind of went off on a couple different rabbit trails there, but it's a complex subject. There's nothing that anybody can say that will be right. That's one of them. How do you feel? That's my 2 cents.
No, and you're right. It is exactly. And that's the whole thing about our Constitution, is left to interpretation, and that's the thing, is that, where did we jump the tolerant shark? You know what I'm saying? I've watched it happen in my lifetime, where we used to have an agree to disagree, but now it's to the point where, people are so entrenched, they're killing each other over it. And on top of that, we just saw something we never thought we'd see in our lifetime: people actually storming the Washington D.C. And then watching it get covered up. So that's rather fascinating. So your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking, trying to figure out what's really changed, and a couple of things jumped to mind. One, I think we talked about this on a previous roundtable, actually in a different setting, but it definitely comes back to truth in journalism and the end of the what was it called, the
Fairness Doctrine.
Gosh, yeah, there you go, the Fairness Doctrine. And
under Reagan.
The reality is, right, the reality is that now there is no automatic process by which there's counter arguments presented for stupid things that are said. And more the platforms, I mean, there always were platforms that were bought that were stupid platforms, or that said stupid things on a I don't know if a platform can be stupid, but platform used for just ridiculous, like a perfect one to jump to that everyone can agree on is like William Randolph Hearst and the yellow journalism. This was a useful platform that was just used for very nefarious things, and that's always been a problem. But what we had in this country were platforms that were for the common good, doing just that, having to serve the common good. And if you lose those platforms, then you essentially don't have any platform anymore that's just for the regular person, that's just for the truth, that's just for the reality piece, people that are fans of reality, that's just number one. That's just the first problem. I think the second problem is daunting as well, and that is that with the internet age, it seems like we have sort of this reward cycle for the most outrageous things that you can say, and I don't know, it's been a change in tone that I felt. In fact, I'm not even sure I could put my finger directly on it, but I can certainly point to evidence of it or something that I could point at to show you what I mean. Fundraising document that I had seen, and it, I'm not to pick on any particular political party, but it was a Republican fundraiser that was just saying things about the opposition that I was shocked. I'm not easily shocked, but I was actually shocked at the tone of this thing. And to paint out your opposition as being, stupid or unwise or going in the wrong direction or whatever, again, that's age old. But to point at them and say that they're subhuman, they're evil, they're from outer space, they're trying to kill you, they're trying to eat your children. And I don't know, they crossed a line at some point. I don't know when, but they crossed a line at some point. And that's really, it goes back to what you were saying. That's why I guess my brain goes here, but tolerance to other people. Oh my God, we need to back off this rhetoric, back off this us and them stuff. What's that old saying? If you point at me, then all the other fingers are pointing at you. We all have a bad day. We all do stupid things. It's only when you do a consistent row of stupid things that you really should be called out for it. Otherwise, everybody has a bad day. And I think that we as military veterans, for example, are very pro-gun. We're supportive of gun rights. But I wouldn't say that someone that's against guns or doesn't want people to possess their own guns is an evil person or is trying to hurt me or any, these are extrapolations that just aren't useful. It's not helpful to the conversation. Folks that are against guns are often presenting very rational reasons and often close to home from their personal experience. And you need to meet them where they are. And I'm just throwing that out there as just, a couple of examples. It's on every front. It seems like this I don't know. It's very hardened conversation and us against them to the maximum. Just need to back off from that kind of thing.
And thank you very much for that. I'm going to that just for a second before I get over to Richard Breuer. So we were talking about the Fairness Doctrine. So the Fairness Doctrine was set by the Federal Communications Commission. It was introduced in the 40s and was a policy that required holders of broadcast licenses both to present controversial issues of public importance and to do so in a manner that was honest, equitable, and balanced. It eliminated that policy in 1987. Okay. And so this allowed both sides of the discussion. This allowed for the then, the bombastedness of Rush Limbaugh to take hold because he could put his rhetoric out and you didn't have to balance it out or allow for equal programming. And this has definitely a place where the seed started and was allowed to only fester further. So I will now take this over to, we have a response from Council Member Richard Boyer.
Okay, thanks. If I remember correctly, a question was posed of like, how do we get here? I'll attempt to kind of riff off of something that Rico said that I think is very, very important. Back in the days of the radio, they're telling this story and, people are freaking out. I'll say up front, and I can't remember where I read this phrase, but when I read it, I was like, that's the most articulate, short statement that I've read that really nails it. Our information ecology is broke. And basically, if you look at the evolution of how we have communicated all the way back, to the caveman days, sitting around a fire, where speech and grunts and stuff started to form a language. Then you fast forward to print paper, documents could be read, opinions could be formulated, responses, and then radio, kind of the same thing. I remember growing up as a little kid in Southwest Virginia, two uncles arguing, one maybe leans left, one leans right. and they would fight and argue, and then they, all right, let's go have a beer. That doesn't happen anymore. People that disagree nowadays, they're like sworn enemies. They don't know how to disagree and continue on for the for the greater good. And then as we got into the more technology communications with the internet and this, that, and the other, simultaneously, if you think about this, back most of us are, I think, roughly in the same age group. Growing up, there was like 3 news channels, and the evening news with Walter Cronkite and even Peter Jennings. They would report the news kind of on a new tone, like, hey, here's the information, you decide for yourself. With the advent of technology and internet and all these other sources of news, that competition, in my opinion, killed real journalism. So now it's all about, it's like, like it says, if it believes, it leads. And so with the death of journalism and all of this, instant, what word am I looking for? Just these insane headlines that just grabs people's attention. This whole time back in the day where you could receive news, form an opinion, let that process before a response. Now, everything that's getting put out into the world, it's like an immediate emotional response with people. And I think that is a contributes to the emotional outrage and the us versus them mentality. And it all culminates into a broken information ecology. Another way, and it's fairly easy to describe what the problem is, what the solution is. I'm not sure. I mean, with the broken ecology information, it's like the best way to I read that a way to describe it is with your vision. You've got someone on the left or someone on the right, and they have this strong signal. They have a large reach, but their signal is distorted, meaning not everything they're saying is truthful and factual, but their signal is strong and it's getting out there. And that's happening on both sides. And so with the vision, it's like one side is just single vision. Your peripheral vision is kind of blocked off. The parallax isn't that great. So figuring out how to take the vision of both eyes, the peripheral vision will get corrected, parallax, and you'll be able to start seeing what the actual truth and facts are. But that's so difficult because we're bombarded with so much shit information, information that just produces an instant emotional reaction. And it just gets people fired up. It gets them passionate, fired up, and it just further feeds this us against them. And so all of that, it kind of helps describe the problem, but figuring out where a starting point for the solution, other than small groups, discussing it and at least hopefully have that radiate outward. But it's like pissing in the wind, I'm glad to be part of this group that's very much like-minded. I made a comment earlier in the chat that I consider myself politically homeless because I'm more libertarian minded, and you do you, I do me, and we're good. But like I said, how did we get here? And it's been a long, difficult process with evolving technology that has influenced people's ability to take in information, let it process, let it marinate, and then form some sort of an opinion or thought process. But now it's so instantaneous that is bypassed, and it's just instant emotion. And of course, all of this bleeds over into politics when it comes to development policy and passing laws. And through all that whole process, it has absolutely stepped on freedom and liberty. And that kind of pisses me off. That makes me salty. And so anything that we can do to further the cause of legalizing cannabis, across the board, that's the mountain that I'm putting my flag on. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that, and I think that another contributor is the 24-hour news cycle now. Back then, when we were growing up, you were only limited to the news at, what, you got the morning news, the high noon news, and the 5 o'clock, and then the 10 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? So you had these little blips. So, because I lived in the city of New Orleans growing up, so that's how you heard about news. And the newspapers, you had different colors of different editions depending on the time of day, depending on when it came out. So I definitely think that the 24-hour news cycle has definitely had something to do, because they've had to fill the time. It's the same sort of thing that's happened to sports. Sports journalism is absolutely disintegrated in the 24-hour news cycle because of the hype and rhetoric that it's become, as opposed to providing real information. It produces so much more fluff, and I think that the news has become so tempered to be so reactionary and so inflammatory, to be so emotionally invoking, that it's only stoking these fires. So I'm going to go on over to Council Member Pearson Kennedy Crosby, who had some response to our discussion.
Hey everybody. Sorry, I'm late. Fatherly duties that I thought I had a window. But just as you called on me, I heard a young boy crying. So that, I'm just coming into it, and there's a lot covered right there. And I think we need to look at this as we are in a global society now, which our technology is coming along so much quicker than evolution can really handle. Our ability to adjust and make sense of what is going on is it can't keep up with the technology. The thought that only 100 years ago it would take weeks for a message to get across the ocean, and now I'm talking to all of you guys, like literally seeing me up in Alaska, where 30 years ago it was I guess a little more than 30 years ago, before the Alcan, the Alaska Canadian Highway, was built, it was difficult to get up here. The trail 1898 was a ranger file 33-mile trail to get up here for the gold rush. And that being said, like if you go back to when the United States was put together, we were just it was a conglomerate. It was just a bunch of individuals that were trying to work together. And I think that's the issue right now. We're not trying to work together. And I think that's something that was touched on. And thank you, Odin. Sorry. The issue is we're not realizing how important each of us are to one another. And we need each other to survive and to be able to progress. We're a species that relies on one another, and the topic was brought up, the communication. Yeah, we came from like hand signal, or we came from body language, which most animals use to communicate, to grunts, to understanding what those grunts meant, to storytelling, to teach our next generation what is the important things to stay away from, or what to do in order to survive and be prosperous, to written symbols on a wall, to written language, and then a vocabulary of thousands of words, to being able to talk how we're talking right now. And it's something that's from the whether or not you believe came from billions of years of evolution to 10,000 years of evolution. It's still a speck on the written language, which is only a few thousand years old, and it's something that we really need to. Please go away. Sorry. And it's hard to keep up with that, especially when we're working off of an evolutionary time frame. And we have to understand that. So I think a lot of people are confused, and a lot of people need to understand that we're all in this together. And I'm getting bombarded right now on both sides. Sorry. But
It's cute.
I'll leave it with an armed society is a polite society, and that's I'll keep it there. Thanks.
Go herd the cattle. Love you, Pearson. I know you got more to say there when you get a chance. I'd love to hear more about that. I'm going to go over to Councilmember Brian Buckley.
Yeah, it was already hit on, but I think it's definitely the 24-hour news cycle. I think it's Facebook. I think it's Twitter. And I think it's other social media. They have learned to monetize fear, paranoia, and anxiety. One case in point, Michael Avenatti. That guy was, I think he had dressing rooms at MSNBC and CNN. I don't want to be like, hey, I'm Rasputin, but the first time you looked at that guy and saw the way he was talking, you knew he was a POS. I mean, it was just that bad, but I think CNN had him on 100 times, and he just kept having more stories, and he was jumping into Supreme Court's things. I mean, it was just like crazy, but it was like, hey, it was great. It was getting ratings, and it was stoking people. So when you see things like that, that's just what it's all about. I mean, I saw a great meme where someone's like, if we wanted to end 80% of our nation's problems, the national media went away for 31 days, we could accomplish it. Everyone would just kind of calm down. You wouldn't be stuck on the news, because generally Americans are really awesome people. And it seems like they're trying to turn things back into tribal. Like, I just see people calling out ethnic groups based on colors. You cannot have a successful society that is multiracial when you just call out a group of people. It's like this, like saying all Muslims are terrorists. No, that's wrong. They're called this. Or, I'll use a quote one time. Rudy Giuliani said, he's like, probably one of the best things for Italians was when they actually distinguished there is a mafia. It just wasn't all of them. So things like that, I think it's just really what has derailed this country. I think we have intellectually weak people who will just take in the news as facts, where it's just more of op-eds, and they fail to do their own research and have an understanding. But that's the life they're going to choose, and I would not want to live that life. Like I said, I think it's great with the opportunities we have here, where, trust me, I was probably the farthest thing from cannabis back in like my military days, or just growing up. Just wasn't my thing, but here I am today. Why? Because look at the country we're in. You identify a problem and you're like, I want to go solve it. Hey, this plant, it actually works. Now let's go after it. So you just wish people would cool off on the news, get off Facebook, get off Twitter and all that stuff, because they are echo chambers. Generally, just go out and talk with people, have a beer with someone you just disagree with, and get to know them. Like Rico was saying, empathize. It's amazing when you sit there and say, okay, I see where you're coming from, and we can find a common good. So I think before all this big tech and the 24-hour thing, I think generally all Americans had the same goal. We just kind of had two different routes we wanted to go to get there. Now it's almost seems like the media is trying to pit us, and we have two different end states, and it's just getting bad. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I think the media is pitting us against each other, and I think that's at the same time, we've also seen, civics and civil rights not being taught in schools. Our electorate dumbed down pretty much en masse, so that they can't actually know how to correctly engage. I learned in school. I did learn in civics class, and it wasn't a coach who taught me. Miss Bailey. I had a crush on her. Oop, yeah, I said it. But regardless, that's just how it is sometimes. But I learned my rights, and I've had to exercise my rights all throughout my life, and especially when it came to fighting in court, fighting the federal government. It was over restriction of rights, and me saying no, my rights are over here, and having to actually put my literal financial ass on the line to find out that actual distinction in the end. So there's still test cases and things like that. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't disagree with Brian that if we abolish the media as well as these echo chambers for an amount of time, but also taught our people how to plug in effectively locally and attend their city council meetings, not waiting for them to be dictated to, and actually plugging in and getting the change. And if they don't like the change, then go through the process of how that is changed so that you can arrive. Let me tell you, people, there's nothing more fun than changing the law, nothing more addictive than changing history. It is so much fun. It is just so hard to believe after successfully doing these things that I know so many people that would rather sit by and just say, oh, I don't get involved in politics. Well, politics is involved in everything from everything you buy to your rent, okay, to your utilities, everything that you do in your community. And for people to sit there and say, oh, I didn't get involved in politics, or I don't talk politics, is, I think, a disservice. I grew up in the South, and two things we were taught: you don't talk politics and you don't talk religion. Okay. But that's because people also agreed that we're not going to agree politically. They knew that back then, but for some reason that discourse has been dropped, and now fuck you if you don't believe exactly how I feel, and if not, I'm going to show you up and take you to task for it, as opposed to, again, that tolerance or acceptance. So what is the solution? I don't know. We're going to go on over to Rico and see what you got to say, council member.
Well, first I want to say that when you were doing that, you made me think of the movie where he quit his burger job and he just cussed everybody out. Yeah, and then he threw the Whopper at that dude. Yeah, you're cool. I'm out. Anyway, going real quick, right back to the problem question before we go to what's the solution, or maybe problem then solution, and then I'll hand it off. Citizens United, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When I say that, I'm thinking about human beings. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my neighbor. I'm not thinking about fucking Facebook. I'm not thinking about Johnson & Johnson. I'm not thinking about Tesla or GW Pharmaceutical or any of the other I'm a human too, or I have voting rights or lobby rights and First Amendment rights because I want to spend my massive proceeds to buy laws, right? So I think the Citizens United is a goofy thing that should be taken back with how the other piece of legislation that was removed should be put back in, right? So it's really unfortunate that we have accepted the type of things that we have, right? And so a solution that I would recommend is to get involved at whatever level you're comfortable. I think people would be surprised at how much is actually going on in an active neighborhood association that's working with council members or, whatever the other thing is, whatever they call the equivalent to a council member wherever you're at, right? But there's working with mayors, right? And then above and beyond that, working with your representatives, your state senators, and then if you want to go federal, with your legit congressional delegation. Or you can do like Mr. Kravitz has done and speak where there's surprisingly very little people speaking, which is at the international level, right? Find a non-governmental organization that you can volunteer with, learn the process. It's about educating yourself first and foremost, and then identifying ways that you can take action after that. Whatever path you find is best for you.
No, I agree. It is a key component, as well as I think that we also need to consider things like term limits, and also not allowing um, ex-members of Congress, et cetera, to actually become lobbyists. Those types of influence are how we ended up with Citizens United, because and that type of manipulation. And on top of that, dogged, our country was created for you, the citizen, to learn know your shit so that you would actually show up and do a term. It's not for these, political elite that have now found the system and gamed the system. It's for you and me to actually get up there and be citizens, plug into the system, do what we need to do for a short amount of time, and then go home. That's it. It's not that complicated, but we have made it beyond complicated. But that's just a couple of ideas off of what Rico was saying that I thought, have been, political problems that have put us in these types of manipulation, because it's only an old type of, manipulator in that type of seat that's been there for generations that figures out these loopholes that they're now exploiting, and to the point where, even the Senate itself, it's not ratified on the 60 votes. It's just become this kind of decorum that has been accepted, and now we can't even have proper voting, and nothing is going to be happening for the next couple of years because of actual stalemating and nonpartisanship. Council Member Buckley, and then we're going to Pearson again.
Thank you. Yeah, so we talked about, what our freedoms mean to us. We've addressed the problems, and then I think, solutions, and I'm, piggyback off Rico here, naturally, I just look at everyone who has served in the military. We just have like a sheepdog DNA. It's just something about us wanted to make us go out and do what we did. And it's, what it comes down to is called duty. So, for example, like one thing I do, I get to sit on a veterans they're a Republican. It's just, you have an opportunity to go and sit and talk and work with people. Everything's an influence operation. You can say, hey, this is what I think. Maybe they don't agree, but we just kind of meet halfway and we can find something that will work for all of us. And like I said, I just think it got to that point where people are just so pitted by each other, and they look at a D and an R and it's a big fight and all that good stuff, and the media capitalizes on it. Just everyone take a deep breath and, again, go and work with people maybe you don't agree with. I mean, I'm more of a libertarian myself. I just think both sides have had their flaws, but I'll talk to both sides because that's the only way you can get things done. And if you can't have an adult conversation, you can't check your emotions at the door and just be logical, we're going to keep spiraling and have this problem. But again, I think generally everyone in America are pretty awesome people. It's just, we got weird groups and they do bad things, but you're going to hear about that for at least 48 hours when something happens, and it's going to start annoying everyone else. So like I said, everyone just take an opportunity. It's our duty. We went and fought for this country overseas. We're back here. Keep working on some level and find something you're passionate about and go off and do it. And I think your life's going to be a lot better.
You said duty. Council Member Pearson.
Yeah, he's exactly right. What brings down, going back to, just large societies or prevalent societies, the thing that has always brought them down is not the loss of intellect or intelligence. It has always been the character, the loss of character, and I think that's one of the greatest things, things that make America great, is we have always had this indomitable spirit of, if at least the majority of us, or even just some of us do, and that allows for the ability to build and to be relevant and stay in front of the times. And I think there's been a shift where we are, and we've never been comfortable before, you know, and I think that really, that's what's really, really driving what's going on right now. We are able to be comfortable and get inside of our heads and realize, oh well, this is what is the next level of my next concerns, I guess. I mean, you see places that have poverty and real hardship of life, and this, you also see the suicide rate way lower than a place where otherwise is ease of living compared. I'm not saying that we should go back into living in hardship, but there's something to be said about the fall of Rome and the French Revolution, the how even the Hitler got elected, and it's this loss of character with the Germans. It was pointing the fingers at a group that was identical in all ways, the same as them, but they wanted a scapegoat, or they needed someone to blame the way things were going on someone, so they pointed their fingers at someone else. With Rome, it was they got comfortable and they decreased their military, they decreased focus on their military, and it fell. It fell to in all ways the savages, which were which they didn't really even play against. They just wanted to keep their comfort and do what they were doing, and it's just it's incredible how this rotation goes, and there's just so much for me to say. I don't know if I'm backing myself in a corner here with trying to explain stuff that would take a lot longer to explain than I have. But we're looking at a real. I think the issue lies within where we're getting our information, how we're getting our information. Because I'm here, I run a lodge, right? I run this tourist lodge, and I'm often meeting, sitting down with people from all over the world. Like last night, I sat down with two individuals that were from Cincinnati, right? Cincinnati and Jamaica. Right? This couple that came up, and I had a long conversation with them, and that's not uncommon. ATN, I had two ladies come up here from LA. I think I'm hoping that they came and bought some cannabis off of you. I told them how to shoot, but I'm often with people from all over the country, and the grievances are all the same. And I think the portrayal of the things that we should be worried about on social media are absolutely a thing that is really coerced, and it's directed. We no longer, Facebook is not a human being targeting your profile. It's artificial intelligence with algorithm telling a system what you should bring up in order for you to react to the post. I've really separated myself from Facebook and Instagram this past year, and every time I come on, I can tell they're fishing for me. Like I just went on Facebook to share this. I didn't even get to sharing it before a socialist quote came up, and you know, and it was just like, oh, I really want to put like communism as the purest form of socialism. How do you feel about that? You know, and I stopped. You know, I might even send it. But the thing is that there is no longer a person directing what we think is or what they think is what we want to see, advertising and all that stuff. It is in a system that is learning day by day or minute by minute, second by second, how we react. And that goes for bank loans. Like you can get a bank loan now for $1 million if you put the right things in the application. It doesn't see a person, and it comes way faster than it ever has been, because the algorithm tells the system that it's a decent there's not a decent risk there. With math, emotions don't come into emotions and morals and whatnot do not become a factor. And the more and more we allow for technology and artificial, we leave out the human factor, the thing that makes us unique from anything else. We have yet to design something that can mimic character and morals and good. And good can be definitely, you know, it's case by case, but that's my rant. We need to put the human back in
Right on.
artificial intelligence.
Appreciate you always. Councilmember Crowitz, care to respond?
All right, so I was watching. I was babysitting my daughter and her husband's pets down there, and I was catching up on my TV shows. And if you're gonna watch The Watchmen and you haven't watched it yet, you're into sci-fi, then maybe turn the volume off on your screen for a minute. I don't want to give you a spoiler or anything, but if you're just vicariously interested in it, what they had, it was sort of a alternative universe to what we experienced, where the Cold War had just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and it was very, very, very imminent that they were going to blow each other up. And one very, very bright person figured out the way to stop everybody from jumping at each other and going at each other's throats was to give them something else to worry about. So he opened an interdimensional portal and threw a big squid at them, which killed millions of people. But it got them to start looking at the sky and be worried about squids falling from the sky rather than worrying about yelling at each other. And I don't know, maybe large shrimp instead of squids. I don't know. But that's what we got to do.
Or COVID.
What was that?
I said, are UFOs? And Rico said, or COVID, or
Giant guinea pig.
But I don't know. Seriously, I'm hoping that time is the solution. I guess is where I haven't really given a hell of a lot of thought, to be honest with you. But we're still under attack right now because our former president hasn't relinquished command, and it's just a little thing in the big scheme of our democracy, but it's a little thing that allows us to go from one administration to the next and have a continuous democracy and have a constitutional democracy. So the reverence of the system and the Constitution and of liberty and of our neighbors and of our collective value as a group over our individual value has, up until now uninterruptedly been more important than the individual's personal gain. And the president would relinquish command of the presidency and wish the new president well and go on. And this is such an unprecedented moment. So I guess I'm having trouble thinking about the solution, because we're still essentially under attack. Our democracy is under attack. Our Constitution is under attack. What's really surreal is folks that are essentially attacking our democracy, trying to undermine our Constitution. Many of them, if you ask them on the street, which some of our comedians have done, if you watch some of the great comedy shows on TV, they've asked them, and they've been very quick to talk about the Constitution as their reason why they're doing what they're doing. But I mean, if you're looking at what happened in Myanmar and thinking that's a good idea instead of a bad idea, then I don't know, that should be an indicator you've gone off the rails. You need to reassess your position. But that's kind of, what people have been talking about. Our former, was it Secretary of Defense, Flynn, talking about Myanmar in a presentation as if it was a good thing. It's not a good thing, and it's right along the playbook of these kind of despots and dictators and whatnot, that if they lose an election, they say, oh, there's irregularities, and shoot everybody involved, and we'll start over, and we'll have a fair election after they're all dead. That's the mantra of ridiculous tin pot bullshit. I can't believe people would fall for it in the US. I mean, that's the thing that's harshest for me, is that people fall for that. I mean, not that there's people that are diametrically opposed to each other, or even very passionately opposed to a position, even to the point where they yell at each other. Gosh, there were people during the Civil War fighting down here in Virginia, brother against brother, to the death. I mean, that shit happens. But let's not do it over some ridiculous mistaken notion, or doing it where it hasn't been thought through, and you're really going after your own position, calling in an airstrike on your own position, as they would say in the Air Force. It's just, we don't need to be doing that.
Yeah, we don't want to be calling foo bars on ourselves, that's for sure. Council Member Buckley, and then to Council Member Boyer.
Yeah, I think, Michael brings up a good point, about how, everything with, I'm going to say it, with President Trump, everything going on. Again, I think that's a 24-hour news cycle really just latching on to Donald Trump, and just anything like, I respectfully disagree. I don't think our democracy is under attack. I think we're moving along. But if any way that guy can end up in a news cycle, they're going to do it. And it's kind of like, you flip it around in 2016, Hillary Clinton, I'm now part of the resistance, everyone coming out, I'm going to blow up the White House. It just got crazy, and the media was feeding off of that. So that's why I just kind of warned people, like, wow, like, we will survive. We're Americans. We're very adaptable people. We're a very young nation, and we've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. And I think we've corrected, and we continue to correct things that some of our black eyes of the past, and we are kind of that, there's still the beacon in the night that people look towards, because there's a whole heck of a lot of people trying to get in this country, and not a lot of people trying to leave this country, and I just kind of look at it that way. So just my humble opinion on that one.
Fair enough. Council Member Richard Boyer.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so I was asked to kind of read some stuff that I'd posted in our LinkedIn group, specific about today's date, because it just so happens to be my birthday. But I dug some of this information up a while back, and I thought it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. On this date, and all this obviously is pertaining to liberty and freedom and pursuit of happiness and all that good stuff. On this date, in 1776, George Washington orders the Declaration of Independence to be read out loud to members of the Continental Army in New York for the first time. Little side note with that, something that another little nugget of information that I come across about a month or so ago. Everyone's heard of Thomas Paine and the pamphlet Good Common Sense. Well, he stayed here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I'm at, I forget the gentleman's name and what his position was. He was like a adjunct general, it was judge or something like that. He was kind of high up there on the food chain. So Thomas Paine stayed with him for a while, I think in 1777, where he wrote Good Sense or Common Sense. And I think that's, you know, a nice little nugget of information specific to Lancaster, PA. The other thing that occurred on this date in 1868, which is really cool, was the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, guaranteed African Americans full citizenship and all persons the United States due process of law. You know, I think back to the comment about civics being taught in class, I think there's a lot of very important pieces of history that we need to be reminded of, you know, so obviously stuff doesn't get repeated or mistakes get repeated. But, you know, just kind of wanted to share that information because it's relative. It's pretty cool to know. The larger question of solutions. I mean, I wasn't being sarcastic. I was being serious. I mentioned it in the chat. Just be a good American. But the problem is people have a different definition of what that means. And I think that's, I don't know if it may have been Rico. Someone had made a comment, you know, just go out and just speak with someone with opposing views. You know, get the hell off of social media. And I think that is a starting point. You know, another thing is, you know, groups such as this, getting together to kind of brainstorm, not necessarily an echo chamber, because I'm sure, although I'm certain that there are a ton of areas that we all agree on, there's going to be a few things where we're like, man, not so much, but you know, you're not going to be at each other's throat over it. Whereas outside a circle of, say, regular civilians, that may not be the same. And I think the commonality is, you know, the fact that we're veterans and our worldviews and life experiences have helped shape how and who we are today. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Richard. Very greatly appreciated, and wise words from our founding fathers, needless to say, and why we're, you know, talking the Constitution. So I think we need to remember tolerance and never forget that change still happens person to person. You know, grassroots style worked, and how we were able to change cannabis was because we used our own personal stories. We went out and told people who we were, why I was risking my life and my freedom for using this. It's no different than any American just engaging with each other and finding somebody you disagree with and make it a chance, you know, go have dinner with them, have a drink with them, you know, talk, reach across the aisle. You're not going to agree on absolutely everything with anyone. Okay. But you can find common ground, and common ground could be that beer. It could be that food. It could be something you find in that conversation, but it'll bring a different and a better understanding. I cannot tell you how many people I was able to convert personally due to my own words and my own process. And I'm humbled by it. And I hope that that type of change can continue forward and we can affect change at a level that we want to see. But I have no solution for our current ills. We've made some suggestions, but you know, you that are watching us right now, what does life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness mean to you? You know, where has it gone wrong here in America, and where do you think it could go right? Offer your solutions and ideas, and let us know. I'm going to lead toward wrapping it up. I'm going to take it over to a few other council members. I'm going to go over to Pearson and then to Rico.
Well, I think Rico, I think you wanted to slip him for me in the chat. I'm sorry, I don't want to throw a wrench in it, but I know he asked prior. Rico, you want to go for me?
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, Pearson. The 14th Amendment was mentioned, and I felt like as it relates to, you know, deeper into our conversation, it's important to point out that it granted citizenship to people, to all people born or naturalized in the United States, right? Including former enslaved people, and then guaranteed all citizens equal protection of the laws. It's important. The 13th Amendment, which ended slavery, allegedly, unless you're duly convicted of a crime, right? And then you had all kinds of just arbitrary laws that popped up that targeted specific classes of people, where then they had to come ratify in in the 1800s, and then it continued on all the way through the civil rights era, right? And then it continues on today, where duly convicted drug offenders are rightfully, according to the Constitution, considered slaves for the state. And they could be used however they want. And right now they're being used as little profit bubbles for these, again, citizens, these corporations, these citizens through Citizens United, right? They pay them pennies on the dollar. These prisoners can't use the experience on a resume when they get out. They're disenfranchised when they get out. They have to fight for the voting record again. They can't arm themselves or, be around other felons and stuff like that. So this is an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing fight. And even when we get a big victory, it still opens the way to a lot more work. And the great thing about the setup here is that people of goodwill can come and participate, chip in. All it takes is to look for the other people that are doing good work. All right, tag along, go say hi. But then to wrap it up real quick, and I'm sorry for the bunny rabbit trail, there's a quote that we circulated a lot around the University of Arizona. It says, "A nation that makes a great distinction between its scholars and its warriors will have its laws made by cowards and its wars fought by fools." And so, like they said on Reading Rainbow, right? Like, don't take our word for it. Look it up. Go read a book. You know what I mean? So that's what I got. Thank you for letting me go again.
Appreciate your words of wisdom always. So again, we don't have any solutions except plugging in, and plugging in is where the change happens. So it still happens person to person, as stated. So it requires you to learn the rules so that you can go out and affect the change that you want to see. And if you don't know, then there's places like this. This is what we do. We plug in. We want to see change, and we can't sit by and accept what we have been given. We can. It's just we're choosing not to. Pearson, you got something to say real quick?
Yeah. So I was going back through, the volumes of the history of the United States history, the history of the U.S. Yesterday, actually, when I started on Monday, but the way that the U.S. got going, the way that people were able to get to America was under indentured servitude, right? You couldn't pay your way to get to America. You signed this contract of indentured servitude voluntarily. And that was back in the 1600s, and so a lot of people got over here, and it got to the point of America getting so big that in 1680, it was 10,000. It was officially estimated that 10,000 men, women, and children in English cities were kidnapped and brought over in a transported, unwilling servitude, or involuntary servitude, and sold to people or companies that had large plantations and stuff like that, and just to get voluntarily 5 to 7 years to pay off the 10 grand it would cost to get over here. And then, all the horrible things that came with that migrating down to Africa. and bringing African slaves over here. And then I'm bringing this up to Rico's comment on prisoners and allowing for cheap labor and other than on an educational base. And it's something that we all have to take into factor. I think the big issue right now is we're in America, we're just looking at the past and not actually looking to the future. And yeah, what has been done has been done. It's been done to a great majority of people. I believe 2/3 of people in America are lineage from either indentured servants or have been involved with some type of involuntary servitude. So I think we need to realize that we've all been screwed over. Our ancestors have been screwed over at some point, and figure out how we can leave that behind and allow for success in the human race, because we are all in it. That goes from here to China to both poles, north and south, and we are a global economy now, and we need to realize that if we fight with China, you are not getting a new iPhone. No technology is getting solved. Or you're not getting a new technology if we go to war with really any other country besides one that has natural resources and no economic power. And I'll leave it with this. Arguably, there has never been a democracy that has fought against another democracy.
And there you have it. That industrial military is still quite complex. Look what just happened this week. We left Afghanistan in the middle of the night. So, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of change happening all the way around. And what was reality can constantly change, which is, again, why plugging in and getting active at your local, state, federal, international level is important. And again, reach across that aisle. Let's not forget our Constitution. Remind each other. I grew up watching the preamble on Saturday mornings. Let's get a new generation understanding of, what our rights are, so that we don't have such a woefully ignorant populace that would rather sit by and actively let things happen as opposed to actively participate in the change that they anticipate. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, again, please, if you have your thoughts and ideas on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, where we are, where we're going, please put it in the chat, and we're happy to have that discussion and discussion points, as well as we can follow up in further V.A.C. roundtables. So this is the Veterans Action Council, and my name is Etienne Fontaine. I am with the Veterans Action Council and your other council members. We'll go then thank them all: Rico Prieta, Michael Krawitz, Brian Buckley, Richard Boyer, Pearson Kennedy Crosby. We love and appreciate you all for your points and perspectives. And y'all just keep at it. We'll be back for V.A.C. Roundtable number 20 in 2 weeks. Thank y'all very much. Have a great rest of your night.